Do, do, do. Is it live? Hey everyone, I hope this is live and we're rolling. I see a few people on a live stream. If you're one of them, ping me. Let me know if everything is okay, if audio is coming through. And let's see if this is actually gonna work out. As per usual, technical issues and everything in between. Cool. All right. So I think a few of you are actually on, and you probably can see my screen. I'm gonna give another minute, just so more people can actually join in, because we had a few waiting and they dropped off. So I think they might need another moment to rejoin, and then we can crack on, where I'm gonna give you some insights on the challenge itself, as well as walk you through some of the exciting submissions which people actually submitted. Let's see if this actually works out. I think that should be better. Right. Make sure to ping me in the chat if everything is okay, and then we can probably crack on with a live stream. And everyone else who can join later, they can catch up, because this live stream is gonna be also automatically recorded, and then you're gonna be able to play it at any moment, at any time, on your own, basically. Cool. All right. So I got a ping that everything is coming through, so we can probably crack on. And, just, I guess, from the best of the best, we need to walk through first the actual brief. And thanks so much for everyone who's tuning in and slowly kind of joining the live stream. But we had this challenge about US voting experience. And US voting experience is, if I would say terrible, it would be understatement. But, it's across the globe. It doesn't matter what country you go. The methods are very legacy system driven. They're very outdated. And so because it happens so rare, people don't really, and governments don't really want to invest in replacing them or bettering those experiences, which is a shame if you ask me. But, that's life ultimately. And so what I asked you to do, and also think about how it could benefit your journey as a UX designer, is to solve this issue or improve this experience, and then also use that almost like a step up for yourself, for your UX portfolios, for your UI portfolios. Really, it depends how you want to skin this cat, right? So some people submitted user research or market research, primary and secondary researchers, and I'm gonna show you that immediately. I guess we can start with that. Other people submitted prototypes, which is actor-based prototypes, which is totally fine. I mean, it's up to you where you want to challenge yourself, be it in digital design, in much more creative efforts. But ultimately, that was the case. But let me walk you through really quickly what was the challenge. So again, it's voting experience. Some of the key bits which, just didn't work out for anyone, I guess, is all those issues to do with trust from the citizen's perspective, to do with inability to kind of spend the time, because you can imagine, as a touch point, as a, I guess, multitude of touch points, you request your customers, which are your citizens as government, let's say, for them to show up at a given time at specific dates. So we also have to think of how we can squeeze that in. It's not as easy as it should be, even if you do, let's say, by post all those voting efforts, or even if you want to, let's say, register for voting. It's never easy. So ultimately, that's what I ask you to do. But also think about accessibility. Also think about all those issues historically speaking. For example, this is a prime case where people voted for presidency elections, and because of a placement, physical placement of a folder, people placed and voted on a different people than what they're supposed to. And in that, let's say, county or that state, you could argue that that's why a specific person could lose the presidency and why it could fall through the cracks like that. So that's why UX and experience design is so important to understand and improve it. And other examples which are going to be very relevant is, of course, these ballots which are paper based. So they're printouts, right? But if you look at them, for example, in this one is, I think it's New York, the old ballot, which has like a finger pointing and saying, vote for this if you want to, which is quite ridiculous if you ask me, because you don't need to have that type of complication. And also icons. I mean, do they really represent the parties, or are they just there to clutter things? Actual ballot for, let's say, Mississippi, state of Mississippi, for presidency elections, and that's where, let's say, you could have voted for Biden or Trump. And you can immediately see where the improvements could be done. Even the order of these could be replaced and so forth. So, ability to just streamline this process, digitize it or not, it doesn't really matter. There is just a ton of improvements which could be made for the voting experience. And so, let me just also cover one thing. Before we jump in, and I'm getting a bit too excited, I guess, about the background itself, but I also gave you this sheet, this matrix of potential people to cover or consider. And of course, this was me literally spending 20 minutes pulling this brief together. So it's uninformed, but it's informed enough for you to kind of start off and head off and maybe research more, maybe add a bit more information to it, take it to the next level ultimately. And it's up to you where you want to target, which of these factors you want to take into consideration. And this next case, which I'm hinting and teasing you, with, it's gonna actually cover that, which I'm very, very proud of one of the UX researchers who just went off and researched some bits. But I also gave you some bits like, for example, design system assets, if you would want to digitize this experience and improve it that way. I also gave you some quantitative and qualitative insight sources. So if you, let's say, don't know where to start, you could have just looked up and get some sort of understanding of what's going on with that. And I can see that there is a lot of people joining one by one. Introduce yourselves if you want to. Say hello. Don't feel shy at all. If you have any questions, just drop them down below. We can address it as we go. Let's make it interactive, so I'm not the only one talking at you. And then I also gave you kind of like a blueprint of what you could do. Let's say if you're a junior, you're starting off, you could go through discovery, ideation, and the definition stages, especially if you're just doing it on your own. But these are some of the key activities you could have done in order to come up with a case study, let's say, or start off for that goal to come up with a case study for your portfolio. And ultimately, if you ask me, and I'm going to revisit this topic in the end, but if you would address this as a side project, as a conceptual case, this is a prime material for your UX case studies to make your portfolio stand out from a crowd, because nobody does that. If there's a conceptual case or side project, especially for junior portfolios, people default to UI prototypes and making conceptual redesign of LinkedIn or Facebook, which is, if you ask to me as a hiring manager who reviews that stuff, it's not good enough. You need to push it forward, create a project if you don't know where to start. Simple as that. Anyhow, let's jump into the actual stuff, into the actual submissions. So let me see if I can pull it up. So the first submission, and I need a drum roll, but I don't really have anything to drum, but you hear that, right? So the first submission is the research take on this challenge. And this is super exciting. It's submitted by Susie, who focused on understanding the user needs in the specific state as a UX researcher. She has spent a couple of weekends and she came up, let me just open, with this Miro board. Let's see if that loads in. Cool. Right. So as you can see, this is the Miro board. Oh, cool. Hello, this is Rachit. I'm student in human-centered design in India. I love Match Coffee. Awesome. Thanks for joining, Rashid. So you joined just on time because this is the first submission as well. And this is the, I guess, user research take. So that's why it's quite meaty. There's a lot to it. And I'm just going to fly through. I think I need to do a follow-up video to make it basically, to do it justice, right? But it's really interesting because in just a couple of weekends, Susie just went through and researched different bits. And before I jump into it, credit where credit is due, she used a couple of my templates. These are my go-to Miro templates or Miro templates, which you can download on my blog, by the way. Shameless self-promotion, but you can just get them immediately. Just get the Dropbox link and you can download, which is a proto persona template and the experience mapping, or in this case, journey mapping template. It's how you want to use it. But let's start off here. As you can see, she was kind enough because she basically asked for feedback. So for full disclosure, she submitted it quite early and asked what she could do. And I just said, just make it more visual so it's easier for me as a reviewer, I guess, as a potential hiring manager, to see the key themes like headlines. And also I asked her to come up with some ideas of how to improve, not just, be done with the research, with mapping out things, but also tell me, so what do you think we can do with this? Like almost like a so what type of thing. And so she also put in all those different bits. And so it's much easier for me to just now fly through and also take you on a journey as well. But as you can see, she went into that quantitative research, and she basically says that voting makes people feel a part of a community. And she went through quite a few different sources and metrics trying to understand exactly what is what. One thing what I want to immediately call out is that she went into state-by-state quant, and she highlights that in the Minnesota specifically, there is a massive gap from the other states. And according to this Rutgers report, there is much more people with a disability than with no disability. So I guess her take was to do this based on improvements for the accessibility and inclusion, generally speaking. And of course, I could go deeper into this, but I don't want to bore you. One thing what I asked her as well to do is consider how and like why how can she target something, because the inclusion space is such vast. You have permanent, temporary, and situational inclusion bands, right? So permanent is someone who's, let's say, disabled for life, and they cannot attend, let's say, voting easily. Temporary would be someone who, let's say, maybe broke a leg or something like that. It's just an unfortunate accident, or got some sort of other impediments, and so we cannot just easily go and vote. And situational would be something like I have an eye infection, or I got a flu, COVID, whatever, something which is situational, temporary. Or it could be something like if you're using an app, I guess, and you're driving, chances are half of you is focused on somewhere else, another half on the other. So you almost simulate a disability of your own, if that makes sense. And so I literally asked her to just, so tell me like who you are after, like who are you targeting. And what she did is really she mentioned that the pilot would be the mobility impairment. And this is her terms, by the way. My terms are just permanent and temporary and situational. And what she said is basically that this is her I guess the focus for this research and whatever is to come, so she that actually could answer their needs. And then the vision impairment is a secondary, I guess, because it turns out in greater numbers. So I guess this is what I presume she would approach next, I guess. And based off of that, she created a proto persona, which I haven't read. I haven't dug deeper, but she added some sort of photo, some sort of quotes, and I'm going to dig deeper into quotes because as a hiring manager, that's what I would look for. just to better understand the human aspect and human element of that. And she's saying our state governor is useless, and I'd love to vote him out, but have to, but have to put myself and my health first. Try to vote by mail, but you have to go through so many hoops, and not all from home. And then in the end, your ballot might be still rejected because your witness didn't put their house number on the right line. That's cool. I guess that's easy to understand. Another bit is what I want to go through is a few bits here. So about she's a late 40s, lives alone, works from home part-time. I guess she has some sort of condition which prevents her from doing and being mobile. Again, linking back to that segment of a mobility. And her needs are to vote from home because she can travel or stand in queue, extra time to vote, do as much as possible online without having to print forms, meaning she's housebound, right? So you couldn't expect her as a user to just just anytime show up or impose on her that, hey, if you want to vote, now you have to go through the hoops as in the quote and do something. And then the goals: have more days with a low medium pain, get through the days. That's a bit vague, I would say. I can't edit as a viewer. Vote out of the current administration. Can I actually leave a comment here? Okay, I can't. Well, nevertheless, we can feed it back in, or hopefully Susie is going to watch this stream so she can do it herself. But with the goals, when it comes to the goals in your personas and proto-personas, think about underlying human elements more than the menial kind of stuff, which is like, because the needs and goals sometimes are, mistaken, or you almost take, it's basically goals and needs are apples and oranges. You should be as clear that they're different as possible, because it's quite, the needs are day-to-days, the goals are the underlying. It's quite as easy explanation as that. And then the challenges, which is super important here. So what she's saying: has a computer but no printer, scanner, fax. Unpredictability of a pain makes it hard to plan ahead, and might be okay one day but bed bound the next day, right? And family doesn't live nearby, lives alone. So I guess this challenge is because she can't rely on other people, but I would dig deeper. There is definitely more challenges than that. You can literally, let's say, if you're saying that you're targeting that person with endometriosis, flare-ups of physical pain, prevent her, yada, 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 so I guess she's in massive pain, go on a freaking forum where people gather and talk about stuff. There is definitely forums for that. There's definitely communities, especially in those conditions. You can capture a lot of insight and then add more challenges to that. I guess, time bound, of course, time limits. We need to give credit because this is awesome as is. It's already, pushing that junior bound because it shows depth. Even if Susie asked for feedback midways, it shows depth and understanding that you need to unpack your challenges first before going deeper and coming up with ideas. Don't just jump and redesign. Understand in depth what your users are going through and what are the deeper challenges. So yeah, I would definitely dig deeper. For a proto persona is fine, and given the time frame, but yeah, it definitely would need a bit more stuff. And I'm again glad that she used the templates. If you want these templates, again, go on my blog and you can actually download them and use them as you please. They're totally free. Okay, let's see what we have next. So we have these stages, I guess. This is a typical journey voting by mail in Minnesota. And my question immediately as a, let's say, UX hiring manager, someone who would be sourcing for people, and I'm assessing this as a designer, but also as someone who potentially could review this as a case study, and then also assess Susie as an applicant. And so I would question: is it as is journey or is it to be? If it's as is, spot on. If it's to be, too early. You need to define as is first. So let me just read into that. It looks like it's as is. insights, pain points, opportunity. Okay, it's definitely as if there's opportunities captured. And I'm not gonna go too deep into this because we would spend 2 hours unpacking it. However exciting that might be, you might just not want to hear it from me. You want to probably read it yourself and digest as you please, as you seem fit. But let me just walk you through key actions. Check eligibility. So is she available to vote for that specific effort? Request absentee ballot. Receive absentee ballot, vote on ballot, submit vote, ballot, check ballot was accepted. So some of you might know what I would say here. Like, again, apples to apples, apples to oranges, and to me that seems like there is a mixture of a scope. So check eligibility is almost like it's a small step within the journey. Request absentee ballot is the same. It just seems like, those things could be calibrated better, or they could be spread out a little bit. Also, with a check eligibility, if you ever experience map anything, make sure to include the triggers. Make sure to include that phase where people onboard into their journeys. So meaning, if let's say I'm gonna redesign the experience of brushing the teeth, don't just start the experience with me picking up a toothbrush. Also map out how I got to the toothbrush. Maybe I woke up at 7 a.m., dropped out of bed, or maybe I had a coffee before brushing the teeth. Or did I have a coffee after brushing it? You see how important it is to capture what happens before as much as what happens after, because the context is king and it matters a lot in the experience design. And I see a good suggestion to include the triggers. Yeah, because again, you want to know how your users arrived at the key touch points when they start the experience. If you don't, you're missing a lot because, there's just so many ways to skin a cat ultimately, without going too deep into that. Anyways, the whys, so she captured why she does what she does in those actions, I guess. I'm not going to go too deep. The insights, so extra bits, pain points. One thing which is very picky, and maybe it's me being super pedantic and just kind of like, specific about things, but typically make those stand out. The pain points are the key stuff in UX in the research. The challenge is the more obvious and visually standoff they are, the stand out ish. My English is failing. The more standing out they are visually, the easier is to just direct people at it. And since you're using experience map to understand how the experience it is for that voter, but you also can use it as a tool to communicate with other people, and you should. And so I would just make those red and easily legible, and so it stands out and you can actually see what is what. And I guess you captured that, which is good. And then the opportunities, which is basically specific to that. This is another thing that you might want to, I guess you can keep it as vague, or specifically in the time frames, but you could also attach it to a specific pain point when it shows that you consider, okay, about this point we can do X, about that point we can do Y, and then Z, and so forth. So you can link it up a bit. It's easier to follow. And that's why it might be easier to branch it out in a specific within the actions. Maybe it's phases, maybe it's steps, maybe whatever you call them, some sort of progression. So they have clear lanes and being much more granular. But as a working version, this is really good because eventually it might become like a service blueprint, a map. If you add more information to it, maybe technical bits, touch points, channels, stuff like that. So this is great. And last bit for the research is that's exactly what I recommended Susie to do, is really just come up with, this is the issue, this is what you can do about it on a high level, which then could inform other steps in the UX process. Because I guess here she did some dig into that specific product persona and what we go through, and then she came up with high-level visionary ideas. Naturally, each of these would probably be a project or a few projects, and you would need to be selective which ones you address, which ones are the low-hanging fruits, or which ones are the ones you should never address. So you might want to prioritize if your team and take it forward ultimately. But just to read through exactly what the opportunities are, remind Sharon to check if registered to vote 6 months before. Very specific. Probably would not be as specific here unless you can link it to some sort of contextual bit or ethnography you captured in your research. Make the eligibility check from easier to submit correctly, yada, 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 yada. Okay. Allow Sharon to request her absentee ballot online. Give timeframes for, I think this is where you could do a lot with. Give timeframes for when the ballot will be received so Sharon can plan and doesn't have to walk mailbox every day. Don't require a witness on the ballot. Most states don't. This is, to me, this is something brand new. I don't know what that means, but I presume lives alone, so no one hand to witness her ballot. I guess it's someone you vote by proxy, if I'm correct. If there's anyone from the US or anyone who's on a live stream who knows what witness is, just drop down below, let me know, enlighten me. And then highlight the areas that need to be filled in on the printed form. Allow Sharon to submit her ballot online, notify Sharon when her ballot is received. So one thing, what I would improve with this is really that it's very, very specific. So because you know that this is going to inform some projects, I guess maybe Susie didn't, but anyways, you would probably know, like, what do you do with this? You would probably want to keep it quite high level. Talking about the benefit it gives to, what's her name? Sharon, right? So you talk about the benefit it gives those opportunities, and talking about a bit more strategically, instead of being super specific, because super specific is going to come, and each of these should be a research project to understand if this is the right hypothesis and presumption. But anyways, this is awesome. This is an awesome submission. I'm really glad that there was research done. Given the constraints, given all the different bits, I think it's a great spread of information which can inform other projects, other efforts, even if it's super high level, or maybe it needs more depth, or maybe it needs to consider other players within the experience itself. This is a really good start. Now, as a segue, what I noticed as I was reading this is exactly what we're going to discuss next, because other two submissions are actually more about UI and prototype, which is probably going to wake some people up. I hope I didn't bore while reading you, but allow Sharon to request her absentee ballot online. So the next submission, which is by Ravi, who's a UX designer and didn't have much time to pull it. So looking at this, there's hours of work, and I know that Ravi spent as well on his prototype hours too. It's really just them being shy. Let me just pull it up, so you're gonna see what I saw just before I launched the live stream. So this is, I guess, the digital experience. If you think about it, imagine that it's maybe Sharon, so we can walk her through the new solution. I guess we can tie it in and link the two cases together. But what's happening here is basically, this is, I guess, a digital ballot. And as you can see, as a prototype, it has a few pages, but not to spoil too much. Basically, it's a mobile interface for a state of Mississippi 2020 general election. And if we go to our brief, let me see, which one is it? It's literally this one. It's this ballot, I guess, but digitized and made mobile on a mobile interface. So if I go back, let's see what that does. So I guess, as you can see, just to go into detail, I'm not really sure, but I think what Ravi did is he used the design system of gov.usa or usa.gov, so to speak, and then there is a sigil. I think this is the actual state. It doesn't zoom in as a mobile prototype. But as you can see, what I noticed immediately was that he's pulling the actual date and time, I think. Let's see if it's live. No, it doesn't seem like it's live. I thought that it was pulling the live information because it's an hour behind. But it seems like it is. Maybe there is just a miscalculation. Anyhow, it doesn't matter. But he's trying to do a lot of different bits here. And he's saying in the next step, you will be asked to submit your government gateway ID and social security number. So he's thinking how, I guess, tell people what's in the next steps, which is great. And then he also hinting at the security icon. So let's go and see what's next. Government gateway ID, sign in, use your credential to security, access your voting account. So I guess we're asking people to put in their names. So let me say Sharon. Sharon, did she has a surname? Let's say Smith. Social security number. Let's see if I put something like that. Government gateway ID, which is a question mark. I know UK government has a gateway ID. I wonder if US has that. Let me just, okay, that expands. And then I guess that doesn't work, but I guess you get an explanation and you can apply for it. But then the prototype stuck. Let me just refresh so that I can actually enter all that information. Sharon Smith. You see, with the actual prototypes, you never know what works, what doesn't, because it doesn't really highlight the areas you can interact unless I show the hotspots. But then the prototype looks crap. Anyways, and then date. As you can see, this is sort of disabled visually, but doesn't seem like it's disabled properly. So if I just enter Sharon's, let's say this is her birthday, and then that became immediately able to go next. And this is where, okay, so it picked up the name. So he used the global variables, and I can see the time refreshed. I wonder why it's not correct time. GMT. Anyhow, that's something. There is a bit of misalignment in the text. I'm being very picky, by the way, from UI end, which it doesn't really matter. But you see there is 3 steps: President, Senate, and Congress review and vote. Okay, so he basically, I guess, followed the structure from actual ballot. Except there is more steps to it, so maybe he cut a shortcut or combined them. Let's see what that is. But the first step is basically to president. So I like that he gives a clarity for Sharon to prepare and tells her that you must complete all steps as instructed for your vote to count. So let's proceed. Okay, so it opens the selection. Let's see, let's select something. Again, don't quote me on this. I'm just being impartial and testing out. Okay, so you can select as a radio button. And you can see my cursor in a live stream as well. I can see, okay. And you also can write in. What's write in? Okay, let's test that out. So I'm just gonna say Sharon voted for herself, which one would make it, I guess, invalid. Okay, I guess it's still valid, and there is a bit of an overlap. I don't know if it's intended, but when you go to a next step, which is basically Senate and Congress, and here is basically select one to proceed. What's the rationale behind? So cosinus beta is saying, what's the rationale for allowing write? It seems like a bad idea. I agree. It's a recipe for a disaster, especially if you require people to put it, perfectly and not miss. But yeah, as you can see, there is write-ins. I wonder if it's across the states. Again, anyone from US, if anyone is viewing this from US, if you have experience of voting in US, leave a comment down below. Let us know, because I can see that write Okay, and others have write-ins, like the state of Maine for general election is two has a write-in, which is interesting, to say the least. But okay, so let's say that we are voting for Senate and Congress, right? So I guess these are the real people. If I select that, I can also write in, and let's say that. Okay, and I guess if I select write in, there's a bit of a delay. I guess because of the logic to pull everything together, but I'm just gonna add again Sharon. Sharon is a naughty one, basically destroying her own ballot online. Okay, and let's go and crack on to confirm that. Oh, as you can see, it pulled that information, but it didn't pull the Sharon's write-in information. Because I did select Mike to be in the Senate, but the president was Sharon. Okay, so I guess let me just restart, not to bore you. So if I select Biden, and I proceed to next one, let me just close it down, and then Mikey Mike and Antonia, and I confirm. Okay, and then it pulls the information, all of that text. So I guess he used global variables, I presume, to pull that information and display it in the next stage. And I guess if I vote, one thing with that padlock icon, this is something you could a user like myself, I just had a thought that you could mistake that this is locked or inaccessible as well as much as secure. So I wonder if there's a better metaphor or maybe a message to display that, hey, you could, this is all secure and encrypted or whatever. Anyhow, let's vote. Let's see what happens if we do that. Nothing happens. Okay. Let me see if I can just refresh and take it to the next step. No, so I guess, is it that the prototype? No, there is a success state. Okay. So I guess there was some sort of glitch in the voting, which Ravi might want to address. And let's see if we open. Damn. That's pretty cool. I guess you have a badge, a virtual one, a message which states that your vote has been successfully submitted. And this is something interesting, which is basically make sure to share the digital badge with your fellow citizen. I guess Ravi's having fun though, but I don't know if there's socially can you share anything? Is there anything legal or policy wise? But anyhow, I guess he's ideating that why not? Let's just tell that we're actually voting for someone, or I voted at least as a digital message to just show pride and incentivize other people to actually also vote. A question for Ravi though, if he's on a live stream, is would it also have this eagle as a social message? Because if it is, I'm definitely sharing it. Cool. All right. So let's see what's next. Next one is also a prototype, by the way. And this one is by our old-timer, a person who's submitting so many different prototypes for challenges, for actual UX prototyping challenge. And he just commented, and it's Ayoze. I don't know how to pronounce it still. Damn it, I need to improve on that. But he submitted a prototype as well for basically a voting experience. So let's pull it up and see what's going on. Hey Steve, thanks for joining as well. And you should see that it's now loading, and it's basically loading this website. I had a very quick look, just like with other cases as well, before the live stream, just to prepare. But this is basically an interface which allows customers, citizens, to go and vote. And just like in Ravi's case, this is, I guess, a counterpart, which is perfect. We have a mobile voting, but also from Ayoze, also a desktop version to vote. Let me just see exactly the sitemap. I like the preview just to know how deep. Okay, so he has 3 pages. and 3 steps, I guess, to vote, but he introduces it. He shows the steps of what the citizens are supposed to take. Then he has some mail-in ballot illustrations, and then a call to action to actually vote. So let's do that. Let's see exactly how that's going to work. A loader, which now is a question actually for Eose. Did you actually put in the time loader, which is basically it's a or it's not an actual loader ultimately, right? So if you can just drop a note down below, let's see if that's actually the case. But I just also noticed that there is some sort of greeting message on the left. You cannot see my cursor. It's a shame that live stream doesn't show it. But I'm looking at this left Liberty and that message which was. So let me just reload. I wonder if that's gonna matter. I don't think the progress is gonna be lost. Hi, I'm Liberty. There's a delay, I guess, and then you're dropping in a next text note, which is cool. And then this is what I was talking about in the previous prototype. Your connection is secure, this note, which Ravi, in his prototype, he just had a padlock. And I think if I go to another one, in the login intro maybe, yeah, in here, okay, so he just had a padlock as a metaphor that, you know, people can presume that it's safe. But AOSA is basically saying this is secure, so he informs it. And then location. I wonder if you had some steps here which are invisible. Maybe it would be worth to involve and tell people exactly what we can expect from the next steps as better practice, I guess. And I guess you're inviting to select them as state. So let's select something like, I wonder if they're working, but I'm just going to select, let's say, Florida. Okay, and you get a status message. Thank you for that. That might have been too quick. And also, if you think about your accessibility and inclusion, some people who might not be as, you know, tech savvy, let's say, or a bit more averse towards UI and trends and things of that nature and motion, you might want to invite them to click on something, even if it adds that click. And, you know, some people debatably say that, hey, let's reduce the clicks. It ultimately doesn't matter. It matters who you design for and what their needs are. And if it's, let's say, you know, older generation like Sharon from the previous research effort here, she would definitely benefit from guidance, basically. And, you know, if you take, let's say, gov.uk standards, it's kind of like a step at a time, and you always inform the users what's going to happen next. So it would be worth to add it. Is everyone still, can you hear me? Can you see me? Okay, cool. All right, so there's a fake alarm from this software suite. Yeah, you cut out. You had some lag. I wonder why. Maybe it's the broadband. Anyways, let's crack on. If there's a cutout, just ping me in the chat so we can work around it. I can repeat. I hope I didn't miss anything. I was just ranting about the accessibility and giving people a bit more guidance. Anyhow, so this is where you're asking for them to register. And let me see if... Okay, so this is where you might want to improve, I guess. And you cannot see my cursor, by the way, guys, but you can, you know, you can see where I clicked. So you're putting the input fields in between the lines, but maybe a separation padding margin in between them, kind of like spacing it out a little bit. For example, I can now tell that this is a label for input field, and that is a label for input field, like that your last name, let's say, and the input field is below. But it's not as obvious from the get-go. And I'm sure Sharon and people like Sharon would be confused. And also people who, let's say, want it a bit clear would be also quite confused. But let me just put Sharon's name. Oh, you see, I'm terrible with that. If I'm terrible with that, Sharon would be even more. So let's put some numbers. So you have a tooltip, you will be able to use or identify code during the next voting campaign. And this is another improvement, I guess, because in a tooltip, you are stating what's going to happen next. I will draw that message and just put it next to the button, and use the tooltip to explain what the information is or where to find it. So people like Sharon, basically, she can go and find it somewhere on her papers. She know where to look at or what it is. And this is also relevant for people who just start with this type of process, with this type of service. And then your email. So now if you put any validation, which is a question, so I would say if you put any validation, just put a note in the chat. But let's just try to register and vote and see if that goes through. Success status. Oh, you definitely need to update the copy. And then you have a delay, I guess, and then you port people into it. So one thing, again, me being super picky from the UX perspective in UI terms, let me just go back really quickly. I think you are, as a designer, are going to benefit a lot from this if you can implement those changes. So this you might want to add some sort of bits, and if I just put some random stuff, if you update the tooltip as well, and then you register and vote, you have some sort of delay, and then you display success message. It's way too far from the button. That's one thing. And in a previous state, it was basically Fitts law. It's the distance, literally a physical distance in pixels, from from where you take action and where the effect is. It would be much more natural for any human being if you could indicate it as close to where they click as possible, so it's not switching from one context to the other. This is really why, let's say, a touch bar on a MacBook on an Apple doesn't work, because you're basically switching from one point, from point A to point B, which is another, mini keyboard. So it's two screens, and the action you take in one is reflected on the other. So that context switching is exactly why, you might want to improve it. And then it would make you much more effective designer as well if you can actually tie in. I think you can, if you search for I think laws of UX, there is a lot of resources on that. You can read into it and understand better, but keep things as close to each other as possible. Or if you use something like that toast system for statuses, just keep it in one place, so wherever users are actually getting it, they expect it to be there. If something goes wrong or something goes well, you don't kind of surprise them. And Sharons of the world, actual Sharons from that research would get very, very kind of confused if he did something wrong, or if something is broken, or if he need to do something else, something extra ultimately. But in a voting one, I know I am waffling a lot, but you are saying to basically select a party, I guess. This is where you might, you're just saying that you had trouble understanding the American election system. Who doesn't? I mean, any election system is terrible. And, given all the different bits in US elections as well. Yeah, but I guess this is where maybe what you could improve is you could state exactly what they are voting for, so we know what's the category, I guess. So if I go for, again, I'm being impartial here, by the way, don't quote me on that, but if I go for Democrats, let's say, who won, there's a Robert Turner, Maria Simpson, so I guess these are fictitious. Good. And then you can also, I guess these are your primaries, and these are the secondary for like Senate and Congress, if I understand this correctly. But this is where you could be specific. You could literally state that. You could say the headline, this is president, this is Congress, or whatever, if that's how it works. However, looking at the ballot, which is, I guess, is going to be a lesson for everyone in US election voting ballot system, whatever, is you can select any of these. So as you can see, you can select a president Democrat, but then for a Senate, you could select a libertarian. or then Republican for the congressional district. So there is that kind of like flexibility to just jump from one to the other, and you could select any of these. And you should, I guess, allow to do that. That's totally fine. I mean, given the time frames and the challenges you faced, it's awesome that you pulled this together as well. There is a glitch here. I guess you could pull it up, layer up. That would look, immediately one small tweak. Again, I'm being very picky here, but it would improve Outlook. And if we vote for Mitchell, you are asking if you want to do that or if you want to cancel. Are you sure of your choice? Yes. Of course, this is again me picking, but yes, of course. And I know English is not your first language, but yes, of course, sounds very casual for the context of voting. And I guess maybe that's how it should be. Who am I to tell? Because if you do your user research and you engage with Sharons and other people who might have their own needs and challenges, maybe that's exactly how the digital voting should be. So again, if you have enough evidence, anything flies. That's UX for you. Thanks for doing your duty. Good luck to you. Cool. So you did that. Too fast. Again, the loading is a bit too fast. So I like it overall, but that you could literally ask for me to act on it. So if I go back and now I'm gonna go Republican, and I'm gonna choose something like Jessica. Yes, of course. This, add the call to action, because people, especially if you design for accessibility and inclusion in mind, and so forth, it's kind of like you're automating a lot of bits, but you should really support people's decision instead of taking that flexibility from them. Again, if you think about people who are not as tech savvy, or they need some sort of permanent, temporary, or situational accessibility and inclusion support, you would want to kind of guide them and understand on the micro level exactly what needs to be there, so they don't get confused or they don't opt out or just forget about it. Because people like Sharon from that research from before, if she just from what Susie pulled up here, from what I understood reading it, it's not someone presenting it to me or telling a story. That's the story I got from all those different bits I ran through. People like that, if you would show them something which is a lot of motion and you automate a lot of bits, they just gonna be like standing away. And working with people in government context myself, I know that for sure. That's why I'm saying that you must research stuff, especially if you do digital services for people, for everyone. Because if it's inclusive and you do it for everyone, then you need to consider a lot, and you need to consider their needs and challenges, and then you can work on top of that and make it super meaningful. So it's not distressing, and it doesn't discourage ultimately them from using the new solution. Because if ultimately they vote by usage as well. If they don't like the new solution, they can just say, I'm gonna vote with paper or do a mail-in ballot again and use the old methods. And this would be the worst outcome for any project whatsoever, because I guess as a UX designer, you would come in there to improve the experience, and them voting to choose a different method or different channel than yours would be immediately a fail signal, and the success criteria wouldn't be met. So yeah, these are really awesome submissions. Jose, you saying I will take lessons in English. That's always a good effort. I think English is good to look into. The branding here. One thing what I would wonder if that would kind of how would that be perceived by general public, let's say, because it looks good, and I like your branding for 3 steps for the USA. So you're literally taking that branding bits, and you have literally 3 steps, if I remember correctly, in your prototype. So you carry it on, and then you allow people to go through the steps to actually make their vote and make it count. So that's definitely a good one to note. Other than that, these are really good submissions. So again, Jose, Ravi, and Susie, who did the research and mapped different things out, These are awesome. If anyone has any questions, by the way, before we wrap up, if you need you have any ideas or any feedback for Jose, Susie, or Ravi, leave it down below. I'm sure we might watch this or rewatch it as well if they couldn't make it. So any feedback bits, especially constructive, are actually valuable because they can just improve on it and build on top of that. Because yeah, this is really, really cool. And anyone else, actually, the finishing note, which I was talking about before, that I'm gonna come back to it, but 3 submissions and 3 strong submissions. Now, for everyone else, the reason why I wanted, and I noted before why I wanted for you to approach this big challenge of the voting system is because it's crap and there's a lot of things that can be done. It almost doesn't matter what you do, you're gonna arrive at better conclusions than what people do right now because there is nothing done. I mean, you have systems which are legacy systems, they're old, they're unintuitive, they are not considering of people's needs. And people's like Sharon, let's say from that research, she needs accessible, inclusive solutions. She needs it, in her pocket ultimately, secure, trustworthy, so that when she shows up, she knows what's the outcome and she knows what to do, where to go next, ultimately she can trust the government that her vote is going to be counted. And if you add more hurdles, then it's obviously gonna kind of challenge them and push it back. And almost like a final note on all of this is that if you can take this brief, because it's going to be online, I'm going to leave that video for quite some time, you can basically come up with a good UX case study regardless how you approach it. This was meant to be super open-ended, so with people who struggle to come up with side projects, with passion projects, conceptual projects, coming up with a killer case study, this is it. If you can do this, research left and right, engage with real people, capture quant and qual, and ideate and come up with some sort of solution and document it along the way, I mean, it's a no-brainer. You're going to come up with a case study which is going to make you stand out from the crowd because nobody does that. Everybody's focusing on UI redesign, and UI is not UX again. You need to go deeper. You need to kind of approach bigger challenges. And I see one comment, out of curiosity, where can we find the Miro board? I've stumbled across your stream on my feed. Lito, I'm not pronouncing it right, PL. You can find it on a channel. It's in, I think, one of the latest videos. If you go to uploads, there should be UX challenge voting system, so you can find this brief and you can work off it, and you can do whatever you want. And I would challenge you to pick it up, explore it, deconstruct it, work on it, ideate, and then build something out of it. I mean, ultimately, this challenge is for you to challenge yourself so that you can improve. But also produce the evidence necessary for your next job, next position. Every junior, senior, anyone is going to struggle to come up with, sometimes you're boxed in your day-to-day jobs, and you might not kind of have the opportunity to do all the things which are going to kind of like push you up a level or get you to the next level to get the better job, right? You cannot demonstrate enough. This is it. Take this brief, explore it, work on it, and then you're definitely going to come up with a killer case study. And also self-pace it, self-set the. If you need user research done, and user research projects are what's lacking in your portfolio, research it. That's all you need. If you want to do end-to-end digital service or service design, this is it as well. It's like, doesn't matter how you want to skin this cat, it's going to benefit you. So I'm going to keep this, explore it, and check it, and go ahead. So I hope this is useful. I hope you liked the stream. If anyone has any questions, now is the right time to bounce it down. If not, this has been a really awesome round. I'm gonna do another challenge soon enough, maybe in the next couple of months. But other than that, this is it. Thanks so much, Design Squad. And on that note, I'll see you next time.